Hello, Rob here again for another video game discussion, talk, conversation, or me just rabbiting on. Today we're talking about Illusion, Tale of the Mind. Let's get on with it, shall we? Right, this is an indie game by the company you just saw, and this is basically how you set up the game, how the game starts. It's really weird, you know. It gives the impression of, I don't know if this game has completely vanished into obscurity, but a PlayStation 3 title based on those old American McGee books. I think it was Alice Madness Returns. I know there's other games that do that, especially contemporary speaking, but games which use sort of gothic fairy tale. There's not a lot of them, so that is what this is. You play a little girl there, Emma, and if only it was just Emma, because along with you, in the great tradition of sci-fi games, not of RPG, fantasy, whatever, you have an annoying companion. And if you see what my character's doing there, she's trying to align that little puzzle there, so it unlocks something. That's what a lot of the puzzles are about, sort of. I'll explain that later on, because it is relevant in this video. But yeah, Alice and American McGee, I should say. It's indie game, and so far, I've got to credit it, because, you know, people say, oh, the indie games, the graphics are rubbish, and I think that's missing the point. What I like about indie games is graphics aren't important, so they try and go for tone. Because, as people will have noticed, the game market's either all in with AAA, or, you know, indie, there's no in between. And this reminds me of like the PlayStation 2 era, and you had middle of the road, sort of middle budget games that sort of filled up your catalogue. And that's a good thing, I think. That's when more indie games do that, the better. And this is a bit, it's early on. It's actually in the sort of the XMB cross media bar art. In the background there, way in the background there, is a giant blinking iris, which is just such a cool image, isn't it? I know the character design implies that this is a big old kids game, but stuff like this, clearly it isn't the case. I'll explain let's explain the plot now. They'll just tell you about it later if you're paying attention to the subtitles too. But basically you wake up, you don't know where you are, you travel into this eye. Just look at that big creepy thing, it's bloody wonderful. You travel into this eye, and that takes you into someone's memory or brain, if you will. So you can, as well as American McGee's Alice games, Alice Madness Returns, you can also throw in Psychonauts. Now, Psychonauts is one of my favourite games, so if you invoke the wrath of that, you run my good books immediately, and that's so cool. I'm sorry. But yeah, that's the setup. You go to different people and fix them. But from there, the art style changes drastically. And if this is an indie game, or if it's a mid-range game, or however you want to pen it, you got to credit the fact that that art style change there was very, very ambitious. And it happens again in the storytelling aspect of the people who you bring the memories back to life for. It goes through sort of various art styles, and this is one of them. It's just telling a story through, well, still photographs, basically. It's all massively over-exaggerated, like you see there with that guy holding that thing over his head, but still, it's interesting. And you look at the AAA space, there's no interesting. It's all lost-led, you know, you don't make games that could lose money, which is a bad thing. And that's the first guy that you gotta do. Art direction style when it comes to the characters. Well, he speaks in a French accent, so I believe it has sort of a sense of homage to French animation, which in this country, in the UK, we don't get. It's either anime or Pixar or DreamWorks or whatever, so to see something which pays homage to European animation, that's cool. And if you see at the bottom of the subtitles there, this is the concept being explained. And you see at the bottom of that mustachioed thing in the middle, It's got a lot of cracks in it, if you can make that out. You basically have to fill in those cracks. Like there's icons there, you got to go and collect things, and it'll bring him back from the brink. And this is what I was talking about earlier with the puzzles. It's really interesting. Admittedly, it's just pressing buttons in the right order until you get a thing fixed. But yeah, let's not scrutinise what a puzzle is. But the whole idea here is you have to play with perspective. I mean, there's a big, massive bottle of wine there, which is really far in the foreground. And what I've done is sort of align that little thing in the middle so I can jump over it as such. And perspective is also a thing which sort of plays into the game thematically. It's about regaining your perspective through fixing memories. So the idea that the gameplay is all about fiddling with perspectives, I think, is a very neat way to tie it all together. And don't get me wrong, I don't think it's flawless in that execution, but when you haven't got like a major studio budget to work with, given what they've done, I think it's laudable. What's less laudable though? I mean, I know it's a side effect of having a character who's basically a little girl, but it's just the moving about. I don't want to call it stiff, it's just slow. When you play a lot of games, you have like the sprint button, or you can go really fast, so it makes traversing the game a little less awkward, let's say. But here, I mean, all I'm basically doing is going from side to the side of the screen and kicking those egg sacks with things coming out of them. I don't know what you want to call them. It still feels like it takes a lot longer than it necessarily should. Now, whether you want to call that padding or whether you want to call that something else remains to be seen, but it's just kind of annoying when you've got to run from one side of the screen to the other almost continuously. More than this gameplay implies, because I am an idiot when it comes to puzzle games. I just want to shoot something or blow something up. But as far as sort of a change of pace, yeah, I can appreciate that. As you can see there, I'm collecting more of the shards to regain the not the lead characters, the lead character for this little world. And as I was saying earlier, with the art styles, here is another change. It's a very simple type of animation. Unfortunately, voice acting's not great. But again, you can't pick on independent games for things which, would be excellent in a AAA game or whatever, because, again, budget is a thing, and you can only afford what you can only afford. But I think what's more important with titles like this is it's not about sort of look at us, look at how flash we are. It's like independent movies. It's ideas driven. So, and with ideas, it's not about sort of making it absolutely eye-bleedingly high definition and 60 frames a second and this and that. It's about tone and art direction. And even if the gameplay in this, well, let's be fair, it's repetitive, but it's because of that art style and that direction and that imagination that it's engaging in some way. Admittedly, there's little touches like that thing that's next to you floating, which is so annoying. Which brings me to another aspect which I feel like they could have done a better job with. I know that people don't... Like, the whole idea a few years ago was you had an open world map, or like something which said, you go here, you go here, you go left, right, whatever. It basically led you by the nose. And whether we want to credit Dark Souls for that, or whether we want to credit something else for that, the point remains that that sort of idea of the mini-map leading you along and the games being a bit more open to allow you to discover them, that's becoming more prevalent. But at the same time, in doing that, I think it really brings into focus some games. Well, they're not especially well designed in the level aspect. Here you go again. This puzzle's just perspective, spinning those things around and making them fit into a lovely elephant riding the ball. But anyway, yeah, the level design. There's certain points where that guy says, floating up there in the top left, he says, yeah, I can see it. And you're thinking, I can see what? What am I supposed to be doing here? And when it's got an art style which is, let's be honest, it's not targeted towards kids, but it's certainly going to appeal to them, given that the character design is what it is. I think it's a little weak, really. But on this puzzle took me more time than I'd care to admit. But yeah, it's a strong game, Illumination, on a aspiration and a level design and a artistic quality sense. But again, it's lacking in certain places. But yeah, if you like that, click like, subscribe, and check out all the other stuff we have here on the Geek Show. But until next time, when I think I'll be talking about We Happy Few, I've been Rob, and we shall see you later.